3 knocks changed everything. I should have let them freeze a stranger and his dying boy begging at my door. But I opened it. Gave them my last bowl of stew, my mother's quilt, the bed I slept in. The cowboy fixed my broken fence, chopped wood, made his son laugh in my cold cabin. Then Lucas Crane rode up and called him by another name. Nathaniel Thorne Harrison, railroad heir, millionaire. I'd fed a rich man my scraps while I starved. He'd lied. And I'd fallen for every word. Hit subscribe now and watch until the end. Comment your city below so I can see how far Clara's story travels. Let's begin. The cabin door shook. Clara Whitfield pressed her back against it, wind shrieking through the cracks. 2 days of blizzard. 3 logs left. Half a sack of potatoes. No bullets for the rifle. Her father's voice in her head. Hospitality ain't optional in a storm. 3 knocks. Please, my boy, he's dying. Clara threw the bolt. A man crashed inside, snow exploding around him. Tall. Ice in his beard. A child limp in his arms. Lips, blue eyes closed. Fire, Clara snapped. Now! The man stumbled to the hearth. Clara grabbed her mother's quilt, the last one, the sacred one, and wrapped the boy tight. Strip him. Everything wet comes off. The man's hands shook but obeyed. Clara ran for the stew pot, poured a cup, blew on it. She pressed it to the boy's mouth. Drink. Nothing. Come on, baby, drink. The boy's throat moved. His eyes opened, pale blue, confused. Pa. The man's voice cracked. I'm here, Tommy. You're safe. Clara sat back. Her hands trembled. The boy would live. She looked at the man. Weathered face, dark hair, eyes the same blue as his son's. Desperate, grateful. Thank you, he whispered. I thought, don't. Clara stood, turned away. You're not safe yet. Neither of you. She threw the last 2 logs on the fire. What's your name? Nathaniel Thorne. This is Tommy. Clara Whitfield. She didn't look at him. You picked a bad night to get lost. Didn't plan on it. Nobody does. She faced him. Where were you headed? Timber Falls, my brother's place. 20 miles south. You'd never make it. I know. Clara stared at the boy, shivering by the fire. Her empty cupboards, her father's words. You can stay tonight. Maybe tomorrow if the storm holds. That's all. Nathaniel met her eyes. That's everything. Thank you. She turned away. I'll get dry clothes. Her father's trunk, his shirt, his coat. She pressed them to her face, tobacco wood smoke, then carried them down. Nathaniel had moved Tommy closer to the flames. The boy sat up now, color returning. Clara handed over the clothes. Eat. She gave them both bowls. They ate without speaking. Clara watched from the corner. Nathaniel fed Tommy first, tore his bread in half, gave his son the bigger piece. Tommy leaned into his father's shoulder. When Nathaniel stood to remove his wet coat, something fell from his vest pocket. A pocket watch. Clara picked it up before he could move. Heavy, gold, engraved initials NTH. She held it out. Fancy for a cowboy. Nathaniel took it fast. Too fast. My father's. Must have been rich. He did all right. His voice shut down. We should sleep. Storm'll break by morning. Clara let it go, but questions burned. The watch, his boots, fine leather under the mud, the way he spoke, careful, educated. Who was Nathaniel Thorne? She gave them her bed, made herself a pallet by the fire. Tommy fell asleep instantly. Nathaniel sat beside him, watching him breathe, shoulders shaking. Clara closed her eyes. What had she let in? Morning came. The storm didn't leave. Snow piled to the windows. Clara shoved the door open, stared at a world erased by white. They were trapped. Nathaniel appeared beside her. Bad, worse. He nodded. Then I work. And he did. Split the rotted log. Patched wall gaps with sacking and mud. Climbed the roof despite her protests, nailed loose shingles. Fixed the barn door. Reinforced the chicken coop. Sharpened every blade. Clara watched suspicious, then surprised, then something else. He didn't ask, didn't demand, just worked. Tommy helped everywhere, chattering. Pa says I'm too brave for my own good. Ma used to say the same about him. Clara's hands stilled on her mending. Your ma. Tommy's face fell. She died when I was little. I'm sorry. It's okay. Pa says she watches from heaven. He tilted his head. You got a ma? She passed when I was your age. Then they're friends up there. Tommy smiled. Clara's throat closed. She bent over the mending. That night, Nathaniel sat across from her, weak coffee between them. You didn't have to do this, Clara said. You didn't have to let us in. My father would have killed me if I hadn't. Still, you gave everything. He paused. Least I can do is pay it back. Clara studied him. Where are you really going? His jaw tightened. Timber Falls. After that, don't know. You running from something. His eyes snapped to hers. What makes you think that? You have the look. Silence stretched. Maybe I am, Nathaniel said finally. Or maybe I'm trying to find what I lost. What did you lose? Myself. The word hung heavy. Clara looked away. When the storm breaks, you'll be free to look. Yeah. He didn't sound sure. Clara didn't know why that hurt. Fourth morning. Silence. Real silence. Clara opened the door. Blinding white. Cold that burned. The ridge unrecognizable. Nathaniel appeared. Storm's over. We should go. His voice was flat, empty. Clara opened her mouth. Hoofbeats. 3 riders emerged through the trees. Clara's stomach dropped. Lucas Crane. Big man. Granite face. Eyes that never smiled. He owned half the valley, wanted the other half. He'd been circling her land since her father died. Lucas stopped his horse, tipped his hat, smiled cold. Miss Whitfield. Came to check you hadn't frozen. I'm fine. His gaze slid to Nathaniel. His smile widened. Found company, I see. Didn't know you took in strays, Clara. They needed help. I'm sure. Lucas dismounted. Walked toward Nathaniel with lazy confidence. Lucas Crane. I own this valley. You are Nathaniel Thorne. Thorne? Lucas tasted the name. Don't know any thorns. Passing through. That's right. Where to? South. Lucas chuckled. Man of few words. He turned to Clara, expression hardening. We need to talk about your land. Not for sale. Everything's for sale, sweetheart. Railroad's coming spring. They're buying for the route. Sell to me now, walk away with money. Don't. He shrugged. Railroad takes it anyway. You get nothing. Clara's hands fisted. Get off my property. You're making a mistake. I said leave. Lucas's gaze flicked to Nathaniel. Something ugly crossed his face. Funny thing. Heard a rumor in town last week. Rich man disappeared with his kid, left a whole fortune. They say he's hiding somewhere playing cowboy. He paused. You know anything about that, Mr. Thorne? Nathaniel went still. Clara's heart stopped. Lucas laughed, low, mean. Thought so. Clara, you're not just sheltering strays. You're harboring Nathaniel Thorne Harrison, heir to the Harrison Railroad fortune. He tipped his hat. I'll let folks in town know where you've been hiding, Mr. Harrison. He mounted, rode off, Laughter echoing, Clara turned. "Is it true?" Nathaniel looked at her. Guilt filled his eyes. "Get out." "Clara, you lied. You're a millionaire and I gave you—" Her voice broke. "I gave you everything and you have, oh God." She ran inside, slammed the door. Nathaniel stood in the snow, Tommy at his side. "Pa." Nathaniel closed his eyes. "Pack your things, son." They rode down the ridge. Neither looked back. Both wanted to. Clara pressed her forehead against the door and didn't cry. She'd stopped crying years ago. But her hands shook as she cleared their bowls. The cabin felt colder than it ever had. Outside, the wind started again. The bowl slipped from Clara's hands and shattered on the floor. She stared at the pieces, ceramic shards mixing with stew she couldn't afford to waste. Her father had eaten from that bowl. Her mother before him. Now it was gone like everything else she'd tried to hold on to. She knelt and started picking up the pieces. Her hands moved automatically, methodically, while her mind screamed. A millionaire. Nathaniel Thorne Harrison was a millionaire. She'd given him her last meal, her mother's quilt, her father's clothes. She'd watched him work her land like he had nothing, like he understood what it meant to break your back just to survive another day. And all of it, every moment, every word, every grateful look had been a lie. Clara pressed a ceramic shard into her palm until it hurt. He'd used her. That's what rich men did. They took and never thought about the cost, because they'd never paid one themselves. She was a fool. A stupid, desperate fool who'd let herself believe, what, that he cared, that 3 days meant something. She laughed. It came out broken. The wind picked up outside. Snow began falling again, soft at first, then harder. Clara stood and walked to the window, watched the white erase the tracks Nathaniel and Tommy had left behind. Good. Let them be erased. Let her forget they'd ever been here. Except she could still smell wood smoke from the fire he'd built. Still see the chair where Tommy had sat swinging his legs and talking about his mother. Still feel the weight of Nathaniel's gaze across the table when he'd said he was trying to find himself. "Liar," Clara whispered to the empty room. She turned away from the window and saw it. Sitting on the table, where Nathaniel had left his coffee cup, the gold pocket watch. Clara crossed the room in 3 steps and snatched it up. Her hands shook as she turned it over, traced the engraving with her thumb. NTH. The chain was heavy, real gold worth more than her entire cabin probably. He'd left it behind. Forgotten, or on purpose. She wanted to throw it in the fire, watch it melt, destroy something of his the way he'd destroyed what? Her pride, her trust. The first hope she'd felt since her father died. Instead, she shoved it in her pocket and walked to the door. She needed to check the chickens, needed to do something, anything to stop thinking. The cold hit her like a fist. Clara pulled her shawl tight and pushed through the snow to the barn. Inside, the chickens huddled together, their soft clucking the only sound. She scattered the last of the feed barely enough and checked for eggs. Nothing. Again. She leaned her forehead against the barn wall and closed her eyes. How was she going to survive the winter? She'd been asking herself that question for months, but now it felt urgent, immediate, like the answer was running out of time. The storm had cost her 3 days of work. She had no money, no food, no way to get to town until the snow melted enough to make the ridge passable. And Lucas Crane was circling. The railroad was coming. She'd heard the rumors in town before, the first snowmen in suits buying up land, promising futures that never materialized, leaving families with nowhere to go. Her father had refused to sell, said this land was Whitfield land and would be until the day he died. He'd kept that promise. Now it was Clara's burden. She straightened and walked back to the cabin. The fire had burned low again. She fed it carefully, rationing the wood Nathaniel had split, and tried not to think about how much easier it had been with him here. 3 days. That's all it had been. 3 days shouldn't matter this much. But they did. Night fell fast. Clara ate cold potatoes and tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw Tommy's face when he'd asked about her mother. Heard Nathaniel's voice. Maybe I'm trying to find what I lost. She rolled over, pulled the blanket up to her chin. Tomorrow she'd figure out what came next. Tomorrow came with more snow and the sound of someone chopping wood. Clara shot upright, heart hammering. She grabbed her father's rifle empty, but whoever was outside didn't know that, and crept to the door. Through the window, she saw a figure by the woodpile axe rising and falling in steady rhythm. She threw the door open. I told you to leave. The figure turned. Not Nathaniel. Moses. Her neighbor from down the ridge, 70 years old with a beard like steel wool and hands that had built half the cabins in the valley. Morning to you too, Clara girl. Moses set down the axe and grinned. Saw the smoke yesterday, figured you made it through, came to check. Clara lowered the rifle, embarrassed. Sorry, I thought I was someone else. Moses walked toward her, eyes sharp, despite his age. Heard you had visitors during the storm. They left. That so? He stepped past her into the cabin, uninvited, but welcome. Moses had been her father's best friend. He'd taught Clara to shoot to track to read the weather. If anyone had earned the right to walk into her home, it was him. He looked around, taking in the patched walls, the split wood, the fixed chair that had been broken since October. Your visitors do all this? Yes. Good workers. Moses. Lucas Crane rode through yesterday evening, stopped at my place. Moses poured himself coffee from her pot like he owned it. Said some interesting things. Clara's chest tightened. I don't want to talk about it. Said you were sheltering Nathaniel Harrison. The Nathaniel Harrison, railroad heir, richest man in 3 states. Moses sat at her table. That true? I didn't know who he was. But he was here. Yes. Moses sipped his coffee. Crane's planning something. Could see it in his eyes. Man gets that look when he thinks he's got leverage. What kind of leverage? The kind that says he knows something you don't, and he's going to use it to take what he wants. Moses set down his cup. He wants your land, Clara. Wants it bad. Now he's got a story to tell how you harbored a fugitive, helped a rich man hide from his responsibilities. I didn't harbor anyone. I helped a man and his son who were freezing. I know that. You know that. But Crane can spin it however he likes, and people will listen because they're scared. Railroad's coming, and everyone's trying to figure out which side to be on. Moses leaned forward. You need to understand something about Nathaniel Harrison, girl. About why Lucas is so interested. I don't care who he is. You should. Moses's voice went hard. 3 years ago, Nathaniel's father died. Left him everything, the railroad, the fortune, the whole damn empire. Nathaniel took one look at it and walked away. Just left. Took his boy and disappeared. Half the business world's been looking for him since. Clara's hands clenched in her lap. Why would anyone walk away from that? Same reason you stay on this ridge even though it's killing you. Because money ain't everything, and sometimes the cost of keeping it is too high. Moses paused. Nathaniel's father was a hard man, built that railroad on the backs of people who had nothing and gave them less. Nathaniel saw what his father did, the families displaced, the land stolen, the lives ruined, and he couldn't stomach it. So he left, took Tommy and tried to find a different way. Clara stood abruptly, walked to the fire. That doesn't excuse lying to me. No, it doesn't. Moses's voice softened. But it might explain it. Man like that running from what he was. He probably forgot how to tell the truth about himself. Probably didn't think anyone would understand. I would have understood. Would you, if he'd knocked on your door and said, "Hello, I'm a millionaire and I'm hiding from my inheritance"? Would you have let him in? Clara didn't answer because they both knew the truth. She would have slammed the door in his face. Moses stood. Lucas is going to town this afternoon. Town meeting tonight. He's going to tell everyone about Nathaniel about you helping him, and he's going to use it to turn people against you. Make you seem like you're in league with the railroad, even though that's the last thing you want. Why would anyone believe that? Because they're desperate and scared and looking for someone to blame. And because Lucas Crane is very good at making people believe what he wants them to believe. Moses put on his hat. If you're smart, you'll ride to town and tell your side before he tells his. I can't leave. The snow is melting on the main road. You can make it if you go now. He paused at the door. One more thing. Nathaniel and Tommy. They're staying at the boarding house on Main Street. Saw them ride through this morning. Boy looked heartbroken. Father looked worse. Clara's throat tightened. I don't care. Moses studied her with those sharp old eyes. Yes, you do. That's the problem. He left. Clara stood by the fire, Moses's words echoing in her head. She looked down at her hands. The pocket watch was still in her apron pocket. She pulled it out, opened it. Inside was a photograph. A woman with dark hair and Tommy's smile, and beneath it engraved in tiny letters, Amelia. Forever. Tommy's mother. Nathaniel's wife. Clara closed the watch, pressed it to her chest. She made her decision. The ride to town took 2 hours through snow that soaked her to the bone. Clara's horse, her father's old mare, half lame and stubborn, picked her way down the ridge, while Clara's mind raced. What was she going to say? How could she defend a man who'd lied to her? Why did she even want to? But she kept seeing Tommy's face. Kept hearing Nathaniel's voice when he'd said, "Maybe I'm trying to find what I lost." He'd lied, yes, but he'd also worked. He'd also fixed her cabin and made Tommy laugh and held his son like he was the only thing that mattered. Was that a lie too? Or was it the only truth he had left? Town appeared through the trees. A cluster of buildings huddled against the mountain smoke rising from chimneys. Clara rode down Main Street, past the general store, the saloon, the church. People stared, whispered. She kept her head up. The boarding house was at the end of the street. Clara dismounted, tied her horse, and walked inside. Mrs. Henderson, who ran the place, looked up from her knitting. "Clara Whitfield, heard you had some excitement up on the ridge." "I need to see Nathaniel Harrison." Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows rose. "Do you now?" "He's in room 3, upstairs. But I should warn you." Clara was already climbing the stairs. She found room 3 and knocked. Once. Hard. Footsteps. The door opened. Nathaniel stood there, shirt half-buttoned, hair disheveled, eyes red like he hadn't slept. When he saw her, something crossed his face. Hope, fear, pain all at once. "Clara." She shoved the pocket watch into his chest. "You left this." He took it automatically. "I know." "You left it on purpose." "Yes." "Why?" Nathaniel looked down at the watch in his hands, then back at her. "Because I wanted you to know. About Amelia. About who I really am. Even if you hated me for it." "I do hate you." "I know. You lied to me." "I did." "You made me think." Her voice cracked. She hated herself for it. "You made me think you understood. What it's like to have nothing. To fight for every day. You don't understand anything." Nathaniel stepped closer. "You're right. I don't understand what it's like to wonder where my next meal comes from. I don't understand what it's like to lose everything because I walked away from mine by choice." He paused. "But I understand what it's like to be alone. I understand what it's like to wonder if you're doing right by your kid. I understand what it's like to be so tired of pretending that you just want one place, one person who sees you as you are and doesn't demand more." Clara's hands shook. "You don't get to say that to me. You don't get to make me—" "Make you what?" "Care." The word exploded out of her. "You don't get to make me care about you when you're leaving anyway, when you're going back to your fortune and your railroad and your life that has nothing to do with mine." "I'm not going back." "What?" "I'm not going back to that life." Nathaniel's voice was steady now, certain. I gave it up 3 years ago, and I meant it. The fortune, the railroad, all of it, I signed it over to my brother before I left. I don't want it. I never wanted it. Then what do you want? He looked at her like the answer was obvious. Peace. A place where Tommy can grow up knowing his father works with his hands, not by taking from people who have less. A place where I don't have to lie about who I am, because who I am is just a man. A father. Someone trying to do better than his father did. Clara shook her head. Lucas Crane is going to destroy you. He's going to tell everyone in town who you are. He's going to make them think I'm working with the railroad that I helped you hide so you could, I don't know, spy or buy land or whatever lie he's spinning. And then he's going to take my land and run you out of the valley, and Tommy's behind you. Clara spun. Tommy stood in the hallway, small and frightened, and holding a wooden horse Nathaniel must have carved him. Are you still mad at Pa? Tommy asked quietly. Clara's heart broke. Oh, honey. He didn't mean to lie. He gets scared sometimes, that people won't like him if they know about the money. Tommy walked closer. I get scared too, that people won't like me 'cause my ma died and my pa isn't like other pa's. Clara knelt down. Tommy, I could never not like you. You're the best kid I've ever met. Then why did you make us leave? His eyes filled with tears. I liked your cabin. I liked helping with the chickens. I liked having a ma again, even if just for a little bit. Clara couldn't breathe. Nathaniel's voice came soft behind her. Tom, go back to the room. But Pa... Now, son. Tommy left, dragging his wooden horse. Clara stood slowly. He shouldn't have said that, Nathaniel said. I'm sorry. He's confused and... Is that why you came to the ridge? Clara's voice shook. Because you wanted to give him a mother. Because you thought some poor desperate woman would be grateful enough to... No. Nathaniel grabbed her shoulders. Not rough, but firm. Desperate. No, Clara, listen to me. I came to the ridge because we were lost in a storm and you saved our lives. That's all. But then I saw you. And I saw how hard you fight. And how you gave us everything, even though you had nothing. And He stopped. Took a breath. I fell in love with you. In 3 days. I know that's crazy. I know it's impossible, but I did. And Tommy saw it too, and he wanted what I wanted, and now we're both standing here knowing we can't have it because I destroyed it before it even started. Clara stared at him. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. You don't love me, she whispered. You don't even know me. I know you gave a stranger your last meal. I know you wrapped my son in your mother's quilt, even though it was the most precious thing you owned. I know you've been alone for months, and you're terrified you won't survive the winter, but you won't sell your land because it's your father's legacy, and that matters more than your own life. Nathaniel's hands tightened on her shoulders. I know you're the bravest, most stubborn, most infuriating woman I've ever met, and I know I don't deserve you. But I'm standing here asking anyway. Asking what? Asking if there's any chance at all that you might forgive me, that you might let me prove I'm not the man my father was, that I'm not using you or lying to you or trying to take anything from you except maybe a chance, to start over, to build something real. Clara pulled away from him, walked to the window, looked out at the street below where people were gathering heading toward the church for the town meeting. Lucas Crane stood on the church steps talking to a group of men. He saw Clara in the window and smiled. Cold, predatory. Lucas is going to ruin you, Clara said without turning around. He's going to tell everyone who you are and why you're here, and he's going to make sure you can never have the life you want. Not here, not anywhere in this valley. I know. He's going to take my land. Not if I have anything to say about it. Clara turned. What can you possibly say? You're a Harrison. Your family built the railroad that's coming to destroy us. Anything you say will only make it worse." Nathaniel crossed the room to her. "Then let me make it worse. Let me stand up in that meeting and tell them the truth, all of it. Who I am, why I left, why I'm never going back, and why the railroad they're so afraid of has nothing to do with me anymore. They won't believe you. Maybe not, but they'll believe you." He paused. "If you stand with me." Clara's breath caught. "You want me to defend you after everything?" "No. I want you to tell them what you told me that first night, that hospitality isn't optional. That when someone needs help, you help them no matter who they are or what they've done or what it cost you. I want you to remind them what it means to be human." Nathaniel's voice dropped. "And then I want you to let me help you fight. For your land, for your home, for everything your father built. Because you shouldn't have to do it alone. Not anymore." Clara looked into his eyes and saw the truth there. No lies, no pretense. Just a man who'd lost everything trying to find something worth keeping. And a boy who'd called her Ma. "The meeting starts in an hour," she said finally. Nathaniel nodded. "Then we better get ready." Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out the watch again. She pressed it into his hand, closed his fingers around it. "Don't leave this behind again," she said. "Amelia deserves to be remembered. And Tommy deserves to know his father loved his mother enough to carry her with him everywhere." Nathaniel's eyes filled. "Thank you." Clara turned and walked to the door. Paused. "I haven't forgiven you yet, just so we're clear." "Understood. But I'm willing to listen, if you're willing to tell me the truth. All of it. No more secrets." "Deal." She opened the door. "And Nathaniel?" "Yeah. If you break my trust again, I'll shoot you with my father's rifle. I don't have bullets yet, but I'll find some." He almost smiled. "Fair enough." Clara walked downstairs. Mrs. Henderson watched her go, eyebrows raised. "Tell Tommy to wash his face," Clara called back. "We're going to a meeting." Outside, the sun was setting. The church bell began to ring. Clara untied her horse and led her down the street. People stared, whispered. She kept walking. Lucas Crane saw her coming. His smile widened. Clara climbed the church steps and stood in front of him. "Miss Whitfield," Lucas said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Come to confess your sins." "No," Clara said. "I came to tell the truth. Something you wouldn't recognize if it bit you." She pushed past him into the church. The pews were filling fast. Clara walked to the front and turned to face them all. Her neighbors, her father's friends, people she'd known her whole life. They looked at her with suspicion, fear, curiosity. Behind her, the door opened. Nathaniel walked in, Tommy's hand in his. They moved through the crowd and stood beside Clara. Lucas followed, took his place at the pulpit like he owned it. "Well," he said, voice dripping satisfaction. "Looks like we're all here. Let's begin." Lucas Crane gripped the pulpit like he was claiming territory. "Folks, I called this meeting because we got ourselves a situation." He paused, let the word hang. "A situation that affects every family in this valley. The railroad's coming, we all know that. Question is, are we going to profit from it, or are we going to let outsiders come in and take what's ours?" Murmurs rippled through the pews. Clara felt Nathaniel tense beside her. Tommy pressed closer to his father. "Now," Lucas continued, "most of you know me. Know my family's been here 3 generations. Know I've always looked out for this town." He smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "So when I heard that Clara Whitfield was harboring a stranger during the storm, I got concerned. Real concerned." Clara's jaw tightened. Here it came. Turns out that stranger wasn't just any drifter. He's Nathaniel Thorne Harrison, heir to the Harrison Railroad fortune, son of the man who built the very railroad that's about to roll through our valley and change everything we know. The murmurs turned to gasps. Heads swiveled toward Nathaniel. Clara felt the weight of every eye in the room. Now I'm not saying Miss Whitfield knew who he was, Lucas said, voice dripping false sympathy. Maybe she was just being charitable, or maybe... He leaned forward. Maybe she knew exactly who he was. Maybe she let him stay so he could scout her land, figure out the best route for his railroad, cut a deal that leaves the rest of us out in the cold. That's a lie, Clara said. Her voice cut through the noise. Lucas raised his eyebrows. Is it? Then why don't you tell us, Clara? Tell us why you took in a millionaire and his boy. Tell us why a man who could buy this whole town decided to hide out on your ridge. Clara stepped forward. Her legs shook, but her voice stayed steady. I took them in because they were dying. Because his son was half frozen, and I wasn't going to let a child die on my doorstep just because I was afraid or suspicious or... She looked at Lucas. Just because I thought like you. Mighty convenient that... I didn't know who he was. Clara's voice rose. I didn't know about the railroad or the fortune or any of it. I saw a man and his boy in a blizzard, and I did what my father taught me, what all your fathers taught you. You help people when they need it. That's what we do here. Or at least that's what we used to do before men like Lucas Crane made us so scared we forgot how to be human. Someone in the back pew shifted. Clara recognized him, John Mitchell, who'd worked her father's land during harvest seasons. He met her eyes, nodded slightly. Lucas's smile thinned. That's a real pretty speech, Clara, but it doesn't change facts. This man, he pointed at Nathaniel. This man comes from the family that's about to destroy our way of life. And you brought him into our community, made him welcome. For all we know, he's been sending information back to his people, telling them which parcels to target, who to pressure, how to... I haven't sent anything to anyone, Nathaniel said quietly. The room went silent. All eyes turned to him. Lucas laughed. Oh, he speaks. Well then, Mr. Harrison, why don't you tell us what you have been doing, besides hiding behind a woman's skirts? Nathaniel's hands clenched, but his voice stayed calm. I've been trying to give my son a life, that's all. A life you got more money than God, and you're playing cowboy. You expect us to believe that. I don't expect you to believe anything. I'm telling you what's true. Nathaniel took a breath. Clara could see the effort it took him to stay composed. 3 years ago my father died. Left me everything, the railroad, the companies, the fortune. I looked at what he'd built, and I couldn't stomach it. Couldn't stomach how he'd built it. So I signed it all over to my brother and left. Took Tommy and tried to find a different way. A different way, Lucas repeated mockingly. Must be hard being so rich you can afford principles. It is hard, Nathaniel said. Every day I wonder if I did right by my son. If walking away from that money means he'll have less, become less. Every day I wonder if I'm being noble or just a coward running from responsibility. He paused. But then I remember my father. Remember how he looked at people like they were obstacles or opportunities, never human beings. Remember how he taught me that money was the only thing that mattered, that power was the only goal worth having. And I knew I couldn't be that man, couldn't teach Tommy to be that man. So you became a liar instead. Lucas's voice was sharp. You came here under a false name, wormed your way into people's homes, made them trust you. I came here lost in a storm. Nathaniel's voice finally rose. I came here with my son dying in my arms, and a woman opened her door and saved his life. I didn't worm my way anywhere. I didn't manipulate anyone. He stopped, swallowed hard. I just wanted to say thank you. Wanted to pay back her kindness the only way I knew how. By working, by being useful, by being a man, not a name or a fortune. Touching, Lucas said. Real touching. But here's what I know, the railroad's coming. Your brother runs it now, doesn't he? Your brother, who you signed everything over to. Convenient that you show up right before the route gets finalized. Convenient that you just happen to stay with Clara Whitfield, whose land sits right in the path they're considering. Clara's stomach dropped. My land is in the path. Lucas smiled. Oh, you didn't know. Yeah, Clara. Your ridge is one of 3 possible routes. If they choose it, you'll be forced to sell. Eminent domain. Railroad gets what it wants. You get pennies on the dollar, and guess who's been buying up the surrounding parcels? He spread his hands. Me, because I'm smart enough to see opportunity when it knocks. You son of a... Clara started forward, but Nathaniel caught her arm. Don't, he said quietly. That's what he wants. Lucas laughed. Listen to your rich boyfriend, Clara. He knows how the game works. This is business, nothing personal. It's personal to me, Clara said. Her voice shook with rage. That land is all I have left of my father, of my family. You want to take it and sell it to the railroad so you can get richer, while I what? Where do I go, Lucas? What happens to me? That's not my problem. It should be. Moses's voice came from the back. He stood slowly, leaning on his cane. Because if we let you do this to Clara, we're saying it's okay to do it to any of us. We're saying money matters more than neighbors, more than community, more than the things our parents and grandparents built here. Times change, old man, Lucas said. Either you change with them or you get left behind. Maybe, Moses said. Or maybe there's a third option. He looked at Nathaniel. You said you signed everything over to your brother. You got no claim on the railroad anymore. None. I signed legal documents, had it witnessed. My brother has full control. And your brother, he's the one making these decisions. About the routes the land purchases, all of it. He is. Nathaniel's voice was careful. I haven't spoken to him in 3 years. Have no influence over what he does. Moses nodded slowly. But he'd take a meeting with you, wouldn't he? His own brother? Clara saw where Moses was going. No, absolutely not. Clara. He left that life behind. You can't ask him to go back. I'm not asking him to go back, Moses said. I'm asking him to use the access he has to help the people who need it. There's a difference. Nathaniel looked at Clara. Something passed between them, a question, an offer, a promise. What are you suggesting? Nathaniel asked Moses. I'm suggesting you go to your brother. Tell him about this valley, about the people here. Ask him to choose a different route, one that doesn't destroy families and livelihoods. Moses paused. And take Clara with you. Let him see whose land he'd be taking. Let him put a face to the name on the deed. That's insane, Lucas said. You think one conversation is going to change anything? The railroad goes where the railroad goes. Maybe, Moses said, but maybe not. Maybe if enough people with power decide to use it for good instead of profit, things can be different. Worth a try, isn't it? The room erupted. Half the people talking at once, arguing, debating. Clara's head spun. Nathaniel leaned close. I can do this, if you want me to. You said you'd never go back. I said I'd never go back to that life. But one meeting isn't a life. It's just a conversation. A chance. He paused. You said you wanted me to tell you the truth. No more secrets. Here's the truth. I'll do anything to help you keep your land. Anything. Even if it means facing my brother. Even if it means admitting I made a mistake walking away without trying to fix things from the inside. Clara looked at him. At the earnestness in his eyes, the fear, the hope. She looked at Tommy, who watched his father like he was the bravest man alive. She looked at Lucas, whose smile had turned sharp and cold. How long would it take, she asked, to get to your brother? 2 days by train, maybe 3 if the weather's bad. And he'd see you? He'd see me. Nathaniel's voice was certain. He might hate me, might throw me out, but he'd see me. Clara turned to face the crowd. I'll go with him. The room went silent again. Lucas laughed. You're really going to trust this man, after everything? I don't trust him, Clara said. But I trust that he loves his son, and I trust that he doesn't want Tommy growing up thinking money and power are the only things that matter. So yeah, I'll go. I'll look his brother in the eye, and I'll tell him what it means to lose your home. And if it doesn't work—" She looked at Lucas. "If it doesn't work, at least I'll know I tried, which is more than you've ever done for anyone." Lucas's face went dark. "You're making a mistake." "Probably. I've made a lot of them lately." Clara crossed her arms. "But at least they're my mistakes, not yours." She turned and walked down the aisle. Nathaniel and Tommy followed. Behind them, the crowd erupted again, but Clara didn't look back. Outside, the cold hit like a slap. Clara pulled her shawl tight and walked to her horse. "Clara, wait." Nathaniel caught up to her. "You don't have to do this. I can go alone. Ask Moses to look after you while I'm gone." "I'm going," Clara said. "If we're doing this, we're doing it together. Besides," she looked at him, "I want to see who your brother is. Want to know if he's the kind of man who'd destroy a family's home, or if maybe, just maybe, there's some piece of your father in him that can be reached." "There isn't," Nathaniel said quietly. "My brother became everything I couldn't be. Everything my father wanted. He doesn't think like we do." "Then I'll make him think different." Clara's voice was fierce. "I'll make him see. Somehow." Tommy tugged on Clara's coat. "Can I come too?" Clara knelt down. "Honey, this is grown-up business. Might be boring, might be scary." "I'm not scared, and I want to help." Tommy's chin jutted out stubbornly. "You helped us. Now I want to help you." Clara looked at Nathaniel, who shrugged helplessly. "He's got his mother's stubbornness. Once he decides something, there's no changing his mind." Clara almost smiled. "All right. But you have to promise to do exactly what your father and I say. No arguments." "Promise." Tommy crossed his heart solemnly. Moses appeared beside them. "Train leaves tomorrow morning. I'll ride with you to the station, make sure you get off safe. My nephew works the line, I'll send word ahead, make sure you're looked after." "Thank you," Clara said. Moses gripped her shoulder. "Your father would be proud. You know that, right? Not because you're fighting for the land, though he'd be proud of that too, but because you're fighting for what's right. For people. That's what always mattered most to him." Clara's throat tightened. "I hope you're right." "I am." Moses squeezed once, then let go. "Now get home. Pack what you need. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Clara rode back to the ridge alone. Nathaniel had rented a wagon to take them all to the station in the morning, and she'd agreed to meet them at dawn. For now, she needed to think. Needed to process everything that had happened in the church. The cabin felt emptier than ever. Clara lit the fire and sat at the table, her father's rifle across her knees. What was she doing? Going to see Nathaniel's brother, a man who ran a railroad empire, who had the power to destroy her life with a signature. What could she possibly say that would change his mind? But then she thought about Lucas Crane's smile, about his certainty that he'd already won, about how he'd looked at her land like it was already his. She thought about her father working this ridge until the day he died, about her mother who had sewn quilts by candlelight because they couldn't afford oil for the lamps, about every meal she'd gone without, every cold night, every moment of fear and doubt and desperate hope. This land was all she had, not just in terms of property or money. It was her history, her family, her proof that she'd existed and mattered and belonged somewhere. Lucas Crane couldn't have it. The railroad couldn't have it. And if that meant throwing herself at the mercy of a millionaire she'd never met, then that's what she'd do. Clara stood and climbed to the loft. She pulled her mother's trunk from the corner and opened it. Inside were her mother's Sunday dress, faded, but still beautiful, her good shoes, her pearl earrings. Clara had never worn them, never had anywhere to go that required pearls. She packed them carefully in a cloth bag, along with her other dress, her father's letters, and the deed to her land. Then She climbed back down and stared at the rifle. She'd threatened to shoot Nathaniel if he lied again. But could she? Could she actually pull the trigger if it came to that? Clara didn't know, hoped she'd never have to find out. She lay down on her pallet and tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't quiet. She kept replaying the meeting, kept seeing Nathaniel's face when he'd talked about his father, about money and power and losing yourself. He'd lost himself, then found himself again, or was trying to. Could she trust that? Could she trust him? The fire crackled, wind whistled through the cracks. Clara closed her eyes and prayed for the first time since her father died. She prayed for strength, for wisdom, for the right words when she needed them most. And she prayed that Nathaniel Thorne Harrison was the man he claimed to be, not because she loved him, though maybe she did, but because if he wasn't, she was about to lose everything. Dawn came cold and gray. Clara, dressed in her mother's clothes, pinned her hair back, put on the pearl earrings. She looked at herself in the small mirror by the door and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like her mother, looked like someone who belonged in a big city meeting important people fighting important battles. She looked terrified. Clara grabbed her bag and walked outside. Moses was already there with his horse, and coming up the road was Nathaniel's wagon. Tommy sat beside his father, waving enthusiastically when he saw her. "You look pretty," Tommy called. Clara climbed into the wagon. Nathaniel looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. Surprise, admiration. Something else she couldn't name. "You didn't have to dress up," he said quietly. "Yes, I did." Clara settled her bag at her feet. "If I'm going to meet your brother, I'm going to look like someone worth listening to." Nathaniel smiled, just a little. "You always look like that." Clara ignored the way her chest tightened. "Let's just go." They rode in silence down the mountain. Moses led the way, his old body swaying with the rhythm of his horse. Tommy chattered occasionally about trains and cities and all the things he'd never seen. Nathaniel kept his eyes on the road. Clara watched the ridge disappear behind them and wondered if she'd ever see it again. The train station was busy despite the early hour. Workers loading freight passengers rushing for departures, vendors selling coffee and bread. Clara had never been on a train, had never left the valley. The noise and movement made her dizzy. Moses bought their tickets while Nathaniel secured passage for the wagon. Tommy pressed his face to the window of the station house, watching everything with wide eyes. "Never gets old," Nathaniel said, coming to stand beside Clara, watching him discover new things. "You've traveled a lot. More than I wanted to. Less than my father demanded." He paused. "He used to take me on business trips when I was Tommy's age. Thought it would teach me about the empire I'd inherit. All it taught me was how miserable people could be." "Is that why you left?" "Part of it." Nathaniel looked at her. The other part was Amelia, Tommy's mother. She hated the life too. Hated the parties and the politics and the constant performance. We talked about leaving, starting over, somewhere simple. Then she got sick and... His voice broke. "She died before we could do it. I promised her I'd give Tommy the life she wanted, the simple life. The real one." Clara's hand found his without her thinking about it. Squeezed once. "She'd be proud," Clara said, "of what you're trying to do." "I hope so." Nathaniel squeezed back. "I hope she'd understand why I had to go back now. Even just for a day. Even just to try." The train whistle blew. Moses waved them over. "That's us," Nathaniel said. They boarded. Tommy bounced in his seat, pointing at everything. Clara sat by the window and watched the valley slide away, replaced by forests and rivers and towns she'd only heard about in stories. Nathaniel sat across from her, quiet tension building in his shoulders as they got closer to wherever they were going. "Tell me about your brother," Clara said finally. Nathaniel looked up. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. If I'm going to talk to him, I need to understand him." Nathaniel leaned back. "His name is Charles. He's 5 years older than me, married 2 daughters. He grew up wanting our father's approval more than anything else in the world and never quite getting it. When I walked away, I gave him what he'd always wanted: our father's empire, our father's legacy, our father's approval, even if it came too late. Does he hate you for leaving? I don't know. We haven't spoken since I left. I wrote once, told him where to send papers, how to handle the legal transfer. He never wrote back. Nathaniel's voice was tight. For all I know, he thinks I'm dead, or wishes I was. And you're going to walk into his office and ask him for a favor? Yes. Clara shook her head. We're insane. Probably. Nathaniel almost smiled. But you said it yourself, at least we're trying. The train rattled on. Tommy fell asleep against his father's shoulder. Clara watched the world pass and tried not to think about what would happen if this didn't work. They arrived at sunset. The city was massive, buildings taller than Clara had imagined possible, streets packed with people and horses and noise that never stopped. She stood on the platform and felt like the world had grown too big too fast, and she'd been left behind. Stay close, Nathaniel said. He lifted Tommy in his arms. The boy was still asleep, and led Clara through the crowd to a waiting carriage. We'll go to a hotel tonight. See Charles in the morning. Why not tonight? Because I need time to figure out what to say, and you need time to rest. Tomorrow's going to be... He stopped. Tomorrow's going to be hard. The hotel was nicer than anywhere Clara had ever been. Soft beds, clean sheets, hot water. She stood in her room and stared at herself in the mirror again. Who was she kidding? She was a girl from a mountain ridge who'd never been anywhere, done anything, met anyone important. Charles Harrison would take one look at her and laugh. A knock on the door. Clara opened it to find Nathaniel freshly shaved, wearing a suit that made him look like a different person. Like the millionaire he'd been born to be. I wanted to talk, he said. Before tomorrow. May I come in? Clara stepped aside. Nathaniel entered, looked around the room, then turned to face her. I need you to understand something, he said. Charles he's not cruel, not intentionally, but he thinks in terms of numbers and outcomes. People are abstractions to him, investments, liabilities. You're going to have to make him see you as a person, as someone who matters, and that's going to be hard. I can do hard, Clara said. I know you can. Nathaniel stepped closer. But I also need you to know that if this doesn't work, if he says no, if he refuses to change the route, it's not your fault. It's not because you didn't try hard enough or say the right things. It's because he's been taught all his life that business is business and feelings don't matter. My father made sure of that. Clara looked up at him. You're trying to prepare me to fail. I'm trying to prepare you for the reality, so it doesn't destroy you if he says no. It will destroy me, Clara said quietly. That land is all I have. If I lose it, I have nothing. No home, no family, no future. So yeah, if he says no, it will destroy me. But I'm going anyway, because at least I'll know I fought. At least I'll know I didn't just let Lucas Crane win without a fight. Nathaniel's hand came up, cupped her face. You're the bravest person I've ever met. Clara's breath caught. I'm terrified. That's what makes you brave. His thumb brushed her cheek. Doing it anyway. They stood there for a long moment, close enough to kiss, close enough to fall into something neither of them was ready for. Then Nathaniel stepped back. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we face my brother. He left. Clara locked the door behind him and sat on the bed. Tomorrow. Tomorrow everything would change. One way or another. Clara didn't sleep. She lay in the soft hotel bed staring at the ceiling, listening to city sounds she'd never heard before. Carriages rattling past, voices drifting up from the street, the distant clang of something mechanical and foreign. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Charles Harrison's face, though she'd never met him. In her mind, he looked like Nathaniel, but colder, harder, with eyes that calculated worth in dollars instead of measuring it in kindness. At dawn, she rose and dressed carefully in her mother's Sunday clothes. The pearl earrings felt heavy in her ears. She pinned her hair back 3 times before it looked right, and even then she wasn't sure. Her hands shook as she fastened the buttons. A knock at the door. Tommy's voice bright and nervous. "Miss Clara, Pa says it's time." She opened the door. Tommy stood there in a suit that was too big for him. His hair combed flat, looking like a miniature businessman. Behind him, Nathaniel wore the same suit from last night, but now he looked different, not like the cowboy who'd fixed her fence, or the father who'd held his dying son. He looked like money, like power, like someone who belonged in boardrooms and mansions, like someone who didn't belong with her. "You ready?" Nathaniel asked. His voice was steady, but his eyes told a different story. "No," Clara said honestly. "But let's go anyway." They took a carriage to the Harrison Railroad building. Clara watched the city pass blocks of brick and stone windows reflecting morning sun. People rushing everywhere with purpose she couldn't fathom. Tommy pressed against her side, unusually quiet. "You scared?" she whispered to him. "A little. Uncle Charles doesn't like me much." Clara's chest tightened. "Why not?" "Pa says it's 'cause I remind him of Ma. And Uncle Charles thought Ma was—" Tommy's voice dropped. "He thought Ma was too poor for our family. Said she married Pa for money." Clara looked at Nathaniel. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight. "Your Ma married your Pa for love," Clara said firmly. "And anyone who can't see that is a fool." Tommy nodded, but didn't look convinced. The carriage stopped in front of a building that made Clara's cabin look like a shed. Tall, imposing, windows that glinted like eyes. Above the door, carved in stone, Harrison Railroad Company, Street 1847. Nathaniel helped her down. His hand was cold. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "Charles is going to try to intimidate you, make you feel small. Don't let him. You're worth 10 of him, and if he can't see that it's his failing, not yours." Clara nodded, though she didn't believe him. They walked through doors that opened into a lobby of marble and brass. Men in expensive suits moved past without looking at them. A woman behind a desk glanced up, saw Nathaniel, and went pale. "Mr. Harrison," she stammered. We weren't—" "I need to see my brother," Nathaniel said. "He's in a meeting. I'll wait." The woman looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Nathaniel's voice stopped her. She picked up a telephone. Clara had never seen one in person before, and spoke quietly into it. "He says—" She paused, listening. Her face changed. "He says to send you up. 10th floor. His secretary will meet you." They rode an elevator that made Clara's stomach drop. Tommy gripped her hand tight. When the doors opened, a thin man in spectacles waited for them. "Mr. Nathaniel," he said carefully. "It's been a long time." "Hello, Peters. This is Miss Clara Whitfield. And you remember Tommy." Peters looked at Tommy like he was a ghost. "Of course. Mr. Charles is waiting in his office. Please follow me." They walked down a corridor lined with paintings of stern-faced men. Clara recognized one Nathaniel's father, she guessed. He had Nathaniel's eyes, but none of the warmth. Just cold appraisal, like he was calculating the value of whoever looked at him. Peter stopped at a door of dark wood and knocked once. "Come in," a voice called. The office was bigger than Clara's entire cabin. Windows overlooked the city. A desk of polished mahogany dominated the space. And behind it sat a man who looked like Nathaniel's reflection in a broken mirror. Same features, same build, but twisted into something sharper, colder. Charles Harrison stood. He was tall like his brother, but held himself differently, like every movement had been measured and approved. His suit was immaculate. His hair was perfect. His eyes swept over them like a judge delivering a verdict. "Nathaniel," he said. No warmth, just acknowledgement. "Charles." You look, Charles paused. Different, older. It's been 3 years. Yes, it has. Charles's gaze moved to Clara, then Tommy. And you brought guests. This is Clara Whitfield, and you remember Tommy. Charles's expression didn't change when he looked at his nephew. The boy's grown. He's 7 now, Nathaniel said. An edge crept into his voice. He asks about you sometimes, about his aunt and cousins. Does he? Charles sat back down. He didn't offer them seats. What do you want, Nathaniel? To talk. We could have talked 3 years ago, before you abandoned everything Father built, before you made me clean up your mess and explain to the board why the heir apparent decided to play farmer. Nathaniel's hands clenched. Clara touched his arm lightly. Mr. Harrison, she said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. Thank you for seeing us. Charles looked at her properly for the first time. His gaze traveled from her face, to her dress, to her shoes, and back again. Calculating, measuring. Miss Whitfield, he said. From the valley, I assume. One of the properties in the path of our new route. Yes, sir. And you've come to ask me to change it. Yes, sir. Charles leaned back in his chair. Do you know how much planning goes into a railroad route? How many factors we consider? Elevation, geology, accessibility, cost, potential profit. We spend months, years analyzing data, running projections, negotiating with landowners. And you think one conversation is going to change all that? I think... Clara stopped. Started again. I think maybe all that planning forgot about something. What's that? People. The actual people whose lives you're going to destroy. Charles's eyebrow raised slightly. Destroy is dramatic. We're offering fair market value for all properties. More than fair in some cases. Fair market value doesn't replace a home, Clara said. It doesn't replace the place where your mother died, where your father's buried, where every memory you have is written into the land. You can't put a price on that. Of course you can, Charles said. Everything has a price. That's how the world works. That's how your world works, Clara shot back. Not mine. Something flickered in Charles's eyes. Interest, maybe, or amusement. Tell me about your land, he said. Clara wasn't expecting that. She hesitated, then spoke. It's a ridge on the north end of the valley, 80 acres. My grandfather cleared it, my father worked it, and now it's mine. It's not much, cabin needs repairs. Barns, half-collapsed, soils rocky. But it's home. It's where I learned to shoot and ride and survive. It's where my parents are buried. It's all I have left of them. And if the railroad comes through, you lose it. Yes. So you want me to route around your 80 acres, even though that routing would add significant cost and time to the project, even though it would affect dozens of other properties and potentially delay our timeline by months. Charles steepled his fingers. Why should I do that? Clara felt the trap closing. Because it's the right thing to do. Charles almost smiled. Miss Whitfield, I don't make decisions based on what's right. I make them based on what's profitable. That's my job. That's what keeps this company running and employs thousands of people and builds the infrastructure this country needs. If I let sentiment guide my choices, we'd never build anything. Is that what your father taught you? The words were out before Clara could stop them. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Excuse me. Charles's voice went cold. Your father, did he teach you that people don't matter? That profit is the only goal? That you can take whatever you want as long as you pay market value? Clara took a step forward. She was shaking, but couldn't stop now. Because if he did, then maybe Nathaniel was right to walk away. Maybe your father built something that shouldn't exist, an empire that crushes people and calls it progress. Clara, Nathaniel said urgently, but Charles held up a hand. No, let her finish. I want to hear this. Clara's heart hammered. I'm nobody, Mr. Harrison. I'm just a girl from a mountain ridge who barely survived the winter and probably won't survive the next one. I don't have money or power or connections. But I know something you don't. I know what it's like to lose everything. To watch your father die knowing you couldn't save him. To wake up every morning wondering if today's the day you starve or freeze or just give up. And I know that no amount of money can fix that. No market value can replace what you took. I haven't taken anything yet, Charles said quietly. But you will. Unless someone stops you. Unless someone makes you see that the numbers on your reports are real people with real lives that matter just as much as your profits. Clara's voice broke. Please, I'm begging you. Don't take my home. Find another route. Please. Silence filled the office. Charles stared at her. Nathaniel barely breathed. Tommy had tears on his cheeks. Then Charles stood, walked to the window, looked out at his city. My father, he said slowly, was a hard man, brilliant, visionary, but hard. He taught us that sentiment was weakness, that caring too much about individuals meant you couldn't see the larger picture, and for a long time I believed him. He paused. Then Nathaniel left, walked away from everything, and I thought he was weak, thought he'd proven father right about sentiment. Charles, Nathaniel started. But then I took over the company, made decisions that affected thousands of lives, signed papers that displaced families and destroyed communities. And every time I did it, I told myself it was necessary, told myself father would be proud, told myself I was building something important. Charles turned from the window. But I never asked myself if it was right, never asked if the cost was worth it. Clara held her breath. Your ridge, Charles said. It's not the optimal route. It never was. We chose it because Lucas Crane offered us a deal he'd buy up the surrounding properties, consolidate them, make the acquisition easier. Cheaper. But it's not the only option. There's another route, Nathaniel asked. Through the Eastern Pass, more expensive, more difficult. But it avoids most of the settled areas, including Miss Whitfield's land. Charles sat back down. I've had the surveys on my desk for weeks. Keep telling myself I'll review them. Keep choosing the easy path instead. Clara's legs felt weak. So you'll change the route? I'll consider it, Charles said carefully. I'll review the surveys, run new projections, present it to the board. He looked at Nathaniel. I'm not promising anything. The board may reject it. The costs may be prohibitive, but I'll try. Thank you, Clara whispered. Don't thank me yet. Charles's voice was firm. This will take time. Weeks, maybe months. And in that time, Lucas Crane is going to fight back. He's invested significant capital in those properties based on our original route. If we change it, he loses everything. He won't take that lightly. I can handle Lucas Crane, Clara said with more confidence than she felt. Can you... Charles looked at Nathaniel. Can you protect her because Crane has resources, influence? He'll come after her with everything he has. I know, Nathaniel said. And yes, I can protect her. With what you gave up your fortune, gave up your name, what do you have left? Nathaniel's voice was steady. I have my hands, my skills, and people who believe in me. That's more than I ever had before. Something passed between the brothers. Recognition, maybe, or respect. You really believe that, Charles said quietly. That you're better off now than you were. I am. Tommy has a father who works for what he has, who shows him that money isn't the only measure of a man. And I have... He looked at Clara. I have something worth fighting for. Charles studied them both. Then he did something Clara never expected. He smiled, just slightly. You always were the better of us, Charles said to his brother. Father just couldn't see it. Charles. No, it's true. Charles stood again, walked around his desk, stopped in front of Tommy. Hello, nephew. Tommy shrank back slightly. Hello, Uncle Charles. You look like your mother. Has anyone told you that... Pa does, sometimes. She was... Charles paused. She was a good woman. Your father was lucky to have her. I'm sorry I never told him that when she was alive." Tommy's eyes went wide. Nathaniel looked like he'd been struck. Charles turned to Clara. "I'll send word when the board makes a decision. In the meantime, be careful. Lucas Crane is not a man who accepts defeat gracefully." "I'll be careful," Clara said. They left, walked back through the corridor, down the elevator, out into the city that felt less foreign now. On the sidewalk, Nathaniel stopped and pressed his hands to his face. "He's going to try," Nathaniel said. His voice shook. "Charles is actually going to try. Did you think he wouldn't?" I thought he'd laugh at us. Throw us out. Tell us we were fools for coming." Nathaniel dropped his hands. His eyes were wet. "He called Amelia a good woman. He fought me when I married her, said she was beneath our station. And just now Clara took his hand. "People change. Maybe he's been changing all along. Just didn't know how to show you." Nathaniel pulled her into a hug. Tommy wrapped his arms around both of them. They stood there on the busy street while the city moved around them, three people who'd just been given something precious: hope. "We should go home," Nathaniel said finally, "before Lucas hears we're here and causes trouble." They took the evening train back. Tommy fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the tension. Clara sat by the window watching the city fade into countryside. Nathaniel sat across from her, quiet, processing. "You were incredible," he said finally. "In Charles's office, the way you spoke to him. No fear, just truth." "I was terrified," Clara admitted. "But you did it anyway." He smiled. "Brave." Clara looked at him. At the man who'd stumbled into her cabin during a blizzard and changed everything. "What happens now?" "Now we wait. We go back to the valley, and we wait for Charles's decision. And we prepare for Lucas to make his move." "How do we prepare for that?" "By not being alone. By building alliances. By making sure everyone in that valley knows the truth that you're not working with the railroad, that you're fighting for your home, just like they're fighting for theirs." Nathaniel leaned forward. "By doing what you do best. Being honest. Being brave. Being the person your father raised you to be." The train rattled on through the darkness. Clara felt exhaustion pulling at her, but also something else. Something that felt like possibility. They arrived back at the valley station after midnight. Moses was waiting with his wagon lantern held high. "Well," he called, "how'd it go?" "He's going to try," Nathaniel said. "Can't promise it'll work, but he's going to try." Moses let out a whoop that echoed through the night. "I'll be damned. Didn't think you'd pull it off." "We haven't pulled anything off yet," Clara said. "Charles said it could take months, and Lucas isn't going to wait." "No, he won't. Moses's smile faded. "He's been busy while you were gone. Rode through the valley making speeches, telling people you sold them out, that you're working with the railroad to get a better price for your land." Clara's stomach dropped. "He's lying." "I know that. Some others know it too. But plenty of folks are listening. Fear makes people believe all kinds of things." Moses helped her into the wagon. "You're going to have to fight back, and soon." They rode through the dark valley. Tommy woke up, briefly looked around, then settled back against his father with a contented sigh. Nathaniel held him close, eyes on the road ahead. When they reached Clara's ridge, the cabin looked exactly as she'd left it. Cold, dark, waiting. "You shouldn't stay here alone," Nathaniel said. "I'll be fine." "Clara, if Lucas decides to—" "I said I'll be fine." She climbed down from the wagon. "Thank you for taking us to see your brother, for trying to help." "It's not just trying to help. It's—" Nathaniel stopped, started again. "Stay with us tonight, at the boarding house. It's late, you're exhausted, and people are already talking. If I stay with you, it'll just give Lucas more ammunition." Clara forced a smile. "I'll see you tomorrow. We'll figure out what to do about Lucas then." She walked to her cabin before he could argue. Inside, she lit the fire and sat in the darkness waiting for it to catch. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind raced. Charles was going to try. That meant there was a chance. A real chance she could keep her home. But Lucas was spreading lies, turning people against her. And if Charles's decision took months, Lucas would have plenty of time to destroy her reputation, her alliances, everything she needed to survive. The fire caught. Flames climbed the kindling. Clara stared into them and made a decision. If Lucas wanted a fight, she'd give him one. But not on his terms. On hers. She stood and walked to her father's trunk. At the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, was a ledger. Her father's careful handwriting filled every page, dates, transactions, agreements with neighbors. Years of community history written in ink and trust. And on one page near the back was a record of a loan. Lucas Crane had borrowed money from her father 10 years ago. A significant amount. And according to the ledger, he'd never paid it back. Clara smiled. It wasn't much, but it was something. Leverage. She tucked the ledger under her arm and banked the fire. Tomorrow she'd ride to town. Tomorrow she'd show people the truth about Lucas Crane. Tomorrow she'd fight back. But tonight, she let herself feel the smallest spark of hope. Because Charles Harrison, a man who ran a railroad empire who could destroy her with a signature, had looked her in the eyes and said he'd try. And Nathaniel the millionaire who'd lied to her, who'd broken her trust, had held her hand and called her brave. Maybe, just maybe, she could win this. Maybe she could keep her home and build something real and prove that kindness mattered more than money. Maybe. Clara climbed into bed and pulled her mother's quilt up to her chin. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, the fire crackled. And somewhere in the darkness, Lucas Crane was planning his next move. But Clara Whitfield was planning too. And she'd learned something in that fancy office in the big city. She'd learned that truth spoken clearly was more powerful than lies told loudly. She'd learned that even men who dealt in numbers and profits could be reached if you showed them the human cost of their choices. And she'd learned that she was braver than she'd ever known. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. But tonight, Clara let herself rest. The storm wasn't over. But for the first time in months, Clara believed she might survive it. Morning came with frost on the windows and determination in Clara's chest. She dressed quickly, tucked her father's ledger into her saddlebag, and rode down to town before the sun cleared the mountains. The general store was just opening when she arrived. Inside, Martha Collins was sweeping the floor, her gray hair pinned back severe and tight. "Clara Whitfield," Martha said without looking up. "Heard you went to the city. Heard you're working with the railroad now." Clara set the ledger on the counter with a thud. "You heard wrong." Martha stopped sweeping. "That's so. That's so, and I can prove it. But first I need you to gather people. Anyone who'll listen. Town Square. 1 hour. What for? To hear the truth about Lucas Crane." Clara met Martha's eyes. "And about what he's been doing to this valley." Martha studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I'll spread the word. But Clara, Lucas has been talking. People are angry, scared. You better have something real to say." "I do." Clara left before Martha could ask more questions. She rode to the church next, found Reverend Thomas preparing for Sunday services, and asked him to ring the bell. He hesitated until she showed him the first page of the ledger. Then his face went hard, and he agreed. By the time she reached the boarding house, Nathaniel was already waiting outside with Tommy. "I heard the church bell," Nathaniel said. "What are you doing?" "Fighting back." Clara dismounted. "Lucas has been spreading lies. Time people heard the truth. Clara, this is dangerous. If you publicly accuse him..." "He publicly accused me first." She looked at Nathaniel. "You said I was brave. Time to prove it." Nathaniel searched her face, then nodded. "All right, but we do this together. You're not facing him alone." They walked to the town square. People were already gathering, farmers and shopkeepers, families and workers, all looking suspicious and uncertain. Clara saw John Mitchell from her father's harvest cruise, saw the Hendersons who'd brought bread to her father's funeral, saw faces she'd known her whole life now regarding her with doubt. And in the center of them all stood Lucas Crane, arms crossed, smile sharp. "Well, well," Lucas called out. "The prodigal daughter returns. Tell us, Clara, how was the city? How was meeting with your rich friend's brother? Work out a good deal for yourself." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clara climbed onto the church steps so everyone could see her. "I went to the city to ask Charles Harrison to change the railroad route," she said clearly. "To find a path that doesn't destroy our homes, and he's considering it." "Considering," Lucas scoffed. "Meaning nothing's changed. Meaning the railroad's still coming through and you wasted everyone's time with your little trip." "He's reviewing alternative routes. It'll take time, but there's a chance." "A chance?" Lucas laughed. "You hear that, folks? She's offering you a chance. Meanwhile, I'm offering certainty. I'm offering money in your pockets today, not promises that might never come." "You're offering money you'll make off our suffering," Clara shot back. "You bought up land cheap, and now you're selling it to the railroad at inflated prices. You're profiting from our fear. That's called business, sweetheart. Something you'd understand if you had any sense." Clara pulled out the ledger. "Speaking of business, let's talk about yours. This is my father's record book. 10 years ago you borrowed $1,500 from him. Said you needed it to expand your holdings. Promised to pay it back within 2 years. She opened to the marked page. "You never did. Not a single payment. My father was too kind to press you, but I'm not." The crowd went quiet. Lucas's smile faltered. "That's ancient history," he said. "It's debt. Legal debt. With interest, you owe my family over $2,000. Clara's voice carried across the square. "That's more than twice what you're offering for my land. So here's my counteroffer, Lucas. You forgive your claim on my property, I'll forgive your debt. We call it even." Lucas's face went red. "That ledger doesn't prove anything." "It has your signature. My father's signature. Witnesses." Clara looked at the crowd. "John Mitchell, you were there when the deal was made. You remember?" John stepped forward slowly. "I remember. Lucas needed money bad that year. Promised to pay it back. Never did." "That's one man's word," Lucas snarled. "Mine too," Martha Collins called from the back. "I witnessed the signature. It's legal." Other voices joined in. People who remembered. People who'd been there. Lucas's face went from red to purple. "You can't do this," he said. "I just did." Clara descended the steps. "You tried to ruin me. Tried to turn everyone against me with lies. But here's the truth I'm fighting for this valley. For all of us. Not for profit. For home. And what about him?" Lucas pointed at Nathaniel. "What about the railroad heir standing right beside you? You expect us to believe he's on our side?" Nathaniel stepped forward. "I expect you to believe that I walked away from the railroad 3 years ago. That I want nothing to do with it. And that I'll do everything in my power to help Clara and this valley survive what's coming." Pretty words from a rich man. "I'm not rich anymore. I gave it all away. All I have is my hands and my skills and my word." Nathaniel's voice was steady. "And I give you my word I'll fight beside Clara. I'll work beside you. I'll do whatever it takes to prove I'm not my father's son." Tommy pushed through the crowd and grabbed his father's hand. "My pa's a good man. He fixed Miss Clara's cabin and chopped wood and made everything better. He's not like the bad railroad men. He's good." Something shifted in the crowd. Clara saw it in their faces, the softening, the reconsideration. "The boy's right," Moses said, stepping forward with his cane. "I've known this valley 40 years, seen good men and bad, Nathaniel Harrison is good people. Worked Clara's land like it was his own. Didn't ask for anything. Just helped. That's more than some of you done for her since her father passed." Shame flickered across several faces. "This is ridiculous," Lucas said. "You're all fools if you believe—" "We believe our own eyes," Martha interrupted. "We believe our own history. And we believe that Clara Whitfield is her father's daughter, honest, hard-working, and fighting for what's right." The crowd murmured agreement. Lucas looked around, saw his support crumbling, and his face twisted into something ugly. "Fine," he spat. "Keep your land, Clara. Keep your little ridge. But when the railroad comes through and destroys it anyway, don't come crying to me. And when you're starving next winter because you're too proud to accept help, remember this moment. Remember that I offered you a way out, and you threw it back in my face." "I'll remember," Clara said quietly. "I'll remember that you tried to take advantage of my desperation. And I'll remember that this community stood with me when it mattered." Lucas shoved through the crowd and stalked to his horse. He mounted, wheeled around, and rode off without another word. Silence held for a moment. Then John Mitchell stepped forward. "Your father was a good man, Clara. Helped me more times than I can count. I'm sorry I doubted you." "Me too," said someone else. Then another. Then a dozen voices apologizing, offering help, promising support. Clara felt tears burn but refused to let them fall. "Thank you, all of you. We're not safe yet. The railroad's still coming, and Charles Harrison's decision isn't final. But together, maybe we can survive this." "What do you need?" Martha asked. "Time and faith. Charles said it could take months to review the alternative routes. In the meantime, we hold steady. We support each other. We don't let fear divide us." Moses raised his cane. "To Clara Whitfield, and to standing together." The crowd echoed it. Clara felt something break open in her chest. Relief, gratitude, hope. As people dispersed, Nathaniel touched her elbow. "That was incredible. That was terrifying. Still incredible." He smiled. "You stood up there and faced down a man twice your size with nothing but truth and a ledger." "Don't forget the part where your nephew called you good," Clara said. "That helped." Tommy beamed up at her. "I meant it. Pa is good, and so are you." Clara knelt down and pulled him into a hug. "Thank you, honey. You're pretty good yourself." They walked back to the boarding house together. Mrs. Henderson had coffee ready and insisted they sit and warm themselves. Clara gratefully accepted, exhausted from the adrenaline crash. "What happens now?" Nathaniel asked once they were alone. "Now we wait," Clara said. "Wait for Charles's decision. Wait to see if Lucas tries something else. Wait for spring. That's a lot of waiting." "I'm good at waiting. Had to be living on that ridge." She looked at him. "What about you? What are you going to do?" Nathaniel was quiet for a moment. "I was thinking if you'll have me, I'd like to stay. Help with your land. Fix what needs fixing before winter really sets in. Tommy and I could rent a place in town, come up to the ridge during the day, work until—" "You could stay at the cabin," Clara said quietly. Nathaniel's eyes widened. "Clara, there's room. Barely, but there's room. And it doesn't make sense for you to ride back and forth every day when there's work to be done." She paused. "Besides, Tommy likes the chickens." "I do," Tommy said from across the room, where he'd been playing with a wooden horse. Nathaniel looked at Clara like he was trying to read a language he'd forgotten. "Are you sure?" "No. But I'm doing it anyway." She smiled slightly. "Seems to be my pattern lately. Clara, if people talk, let them talk. They just stood with me against Lucas Crane. I think they can handle me taking in a boarder." She stood. "But we do this proper. You pay rent, you work the land, and you sleep in the loft with Tommy while I keep the main room. Clear. Crystal. Good. Then pack your things. We leave in an hour." They rode back to the ridge as the sun climbed high and cold. Tommy chattered the whole way about the chickens and the barn, and all the things he wanted to help fix. Nathaniel was quieter, but Clara caught him watching her with something soft in his eyes. The cabin looked less lonely with 3 people in it. Nathaniel carried his few belongings to the loft, while Tommy explored like he was discovering a new country. Clara started a fire and began preparing a stew from the supplies Nathaniel had brought: real meat, real vegetables enough to last weeks. "You didn't have to buy all this," she said. "Yes, I did. If I'm staying, I'm contributing." Nathaniel came back down the ladder. "Besides, I told you I work for what I have now. That includes food." They fell into a rhythm over the following days. Nathaniel worked the land with an intensity that surprised Clara, not just fixing things, but improving them. He rebuilt the chicken coop properly, reinforced the barn, started splitting logs for a woodpile that would last the whole winter. Tommy helped where he could and played where he couldn't, his laughter filling spaces that had been silent too long. Clara found herself cooking for 3, mending for 3, existing for 3. It was strange and uncomfortable, and somehow right. At night, after Tommy fell asleep in the loft, Clara and Nathaniel would sit by the fire and talk. About his life before, about her childhood, about dreams they'd both given up on, and dreams they might still reach. "I never thought I'd have this," Nathaniel said one night. "Peace, simple work, a place that feels like home." "Is that what this is?" Clara asked. "Home? Getting there." He looked at her across the firelight. "What about you? Does it feel different now, with us here?" Clara considered. "Yes, but not bad different, just different." "That's not very specific." "I'm not very good at this," Clara admitted. "At letting people in, at trusting. You lied to me and I want to forgive you, want to move past it, but I'm scared." "Of what? That you'll leave, that this is temporary, that I'll get used to having you here, and then spring will come, and Charles will make his decision, and you'll—" She stopped. "You'll go back to your real life." "This is my real life," Nathaniel said firmly. "There's nothing back there for me. Nothing I want anyway. Clara, I know I broke your trust. I know I have to earn it back. But I'm not leaving. Not unless you tell me to. What if Charles changes the route? What if we win? Then we won. And I'll still be here working your land, raising my son, building something real." He leaned forward. "Unless you don't want that. Unless you want me to go." Clara met his eyes. "I don't want you to go." "Then I'm staying." They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Outside, wind moved through the trees. Inside, something was building something fragile and strong at once. Weeks passed. November turned to December. Snow came and stayed. Clara's land transformed under Nathaniel's work. The cabin was tight against the cold. The barn was sound. The woodpile was stacked higher than her head. They had food warmth each other. And still no word from Charles Harrison. "Maybe he changed his mind," Clara said one morning as she watched snowfall. "Maybe the board rejected it." "Or maybe these things take time," Nathaniel said. "Charles said months. It's only been 6 weeks. 6 weeks feels like forever when you're waiting to learn if you have a future." Nathaniel came to stand beside her. "You have a future, no matter what Charles decides. You have this land, this cabin, people who care about you. That's more than most people have. And you," Clara looked at him. "Do I have you?" "Yes," Nathaniel said without hesitation. "For as long as you'll have me." Clara turned to face him fully. "I need to tell you something." "All right. That first night when you knocked on my door, I almost didn't open it. I was scared and alone, and I'd convinced myself that letting anyone in was too dangerous. But I opened it anyway. And you changed everything. You fixed my fence and made Tommy laugh and showed me that maybe I didn't have to do everything alone." She took a breath. "And then you lied. And it hurt. It hurt so much because I'd let myself start to care." "Clara, I'm not done. She held up a hand. But then you went to Charles with me. You stood beside me in that town square. You've worked this land like it's yours. You've stayed when you could have left. And I realize that the man who knocked on my door that night wasn't lying. Not about the things that mattered. You really were lost. You really did need help. And you really are trying to be better than your father. Nathaniel's voice was rough. What are you saying? I'm saying I forgive you. I'm saying I trust you. And I'm saying... Clara's heart hammered. I'm saying that somewhere between hating you and forgiving you, I fell in love with you. Nathaniel went very still. Clara, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know, needed to be honest about... He kissed her. Gently at first, then deeper, one hand cupping her face and the other pulling her close. Clara melted into him, into the warmth and certainty of it, into the feeling of being held by someone who saw her, really saw her, and chose to stay. When they broke apart, Nathaniel pressed his forehead to hers. I fell in love with you that first night, when you opened your door and saved my son, when you gave us everything, even though you had nothing. I've been in love with you every moment since. Even when I threw you out, even then. He smiled. Especially then. You were so fierce, so brave. I knew I'd do anything to earn my way back to you. You did, Clara whispered. You earned it. They stood there in the morning light, holding each other while outside the snow fell soft and steady, and inside Tommy stirred in the loft and called down, asking if breakfast was ready. Life returned to normal, but different. Better. Nathaniel and Clara moved through their days with an ease that felt like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. Tommy called Clara Ma one day without thinking, then looked terrified he'd overstepped. Clara had cried and pulled him close and told him she'd be honored to be his ma if he'd have her. Christmas came. They had no money for gifts, so Nathaniel carved Tommy a new wooden horse, and Clara sewed him a coat from her father's old wool. For Clara, Nathaniel built a bookshelf for the precious few books she owned, and Tommy picked wildflowers he'd dried and pressed. For Nathaniel, Clara mended every piece of clothing he owned, and Tommy drew a picture of their cabin with 3 people standing in front of it. They hung the picture by the fire. On Christmas evening, Moses rode up with his wife bearing bread and jam. Heard you had a full house now, Moses said with a knowing smile. Figured you could use some supplies. Thank you, Clara said. Would you stay? Have supper with us? They did. And as they sat around Clara's small table, eating stew and bread, and laughing at Tommy's stories, Clara felt something she hadn't felt since her father died. Family. January brought a letter. Clara saw the rider coming up the ridge and her heart seized. Nathaniel was in the barn with Tommy. She ran to get them. The rider handed her an envelope with the Harrison Railroad seal. From Mr. Charles Harrison. Said it was urgent. Clara's hands shook as she opened it. Nathaniel and Tommy crowded close. The letter was brief, written in Charles's precise hand. Miss Whitfield. The board has approved the eastern route. Construction will bypass your property and all settled areas in the valley. Lucas Crane's holdings are no longer needed, and he has been notified. The railroad will break ground in spring. Thank you for reminding me that progress should not come at the cost of people's lives. My brother was right to leave when he did. I'm only sorry it took me so long to understand why. The land is yours. Keep it. Build on it. Live well. Charles Harrison. Clara read it twice, then a third time. Then she started laughing and crying at once. He did it, she gasped. Charles actually did it. The route's changed. We're safe. Nathaniel grabbed her and spun her around. Tommy whooped and danced. The rider watched with a bemused smile. There's more, the rider said. He pulled out another envelope. Mr. Charles said to give you this too. This envelope was thicker. Clara opened it, and a bank draft fell out. She picked it up, and her knees went weak. $2,000. Made out to Clara Whitfield. Another note. Your father's debt with interest, paid in full. Use it well. Clara sat down hard on the cabin steps. He paid it. Charles paid Lucas's debt. That means, Nathaniel calculated quickly, that means you have enough to make it through the winter, through next year. Enough to rebuild, replant, start fresh. Clara corrected. Enough for us to rebuild, to start fresh, together. Nathaniel knelt in front of her. Clara Whitfield, I came to this ridge with nothing but my son and my shame. You took us in. You saved us. You made me believe I could be more than my father's legacy. And now, he pulled something from his pocket. A ring. Simple gold, delicate with a small stone that caught the light. This was my mother's, Nathaniel said. The only thing I kept when I left. I've been carrying it for 3 years, waiting for the right moment, the right person. Clara, will you marry me? Will you let me stay here on this ridge, building a life with you? Will you let Tommy be your son and me be your husband? Clara looked at the ring, at Nathaniel, at Tommy, watching with hopeful eyes. She thought about that night in the blizzard, about 3 desperate knocks that had changed everything, about opening her door to strangers even though she was scared and alone, about taking a chance on kindness when everything told her to stay closed off. She thought about her father's words, hospitality ain't optional in a storm. And she realized they'd all been in a storm, all been lost and desperate and looking for shelter. But they'd found each other, found home. Yes, Clara said. She was crying again but didn't care. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to all of it. Nathaniel slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. He kissed her while Tommy cheered and the rider discreetly turned away, and Moses's voice carried up from down the ridge he'd been watching the whole time. Clara realized, making sure she was safe. They married in spring when the wild roses bloomed where snow had fallen. Moses walked Clara down the aisle. Tommy stood as best man, serious and proud. The whole valley came, Martha and John and the Hendersons, and everyone who'd stood with Clara in the town square that day. Charles Harrison sent a gift, a land deed expanding Clara's property by another 40 acres, cleared and ready for planting. And a note, for my nephew's inheritance. Teach him to work it well. Lucas Crane was gone, left the valley before winter ended, his schemes collapsed, and his reputation ruined. No one missed him. Nathaniel built an addition to the cabin, a room for them, a room for Tommy, a kitchen big enough for the family Clara dreamed of building. They planted in spring and harvested in fall, and lived through winter with wood stacked high and food preserved, and love keeping them warm. Tommy grew tall and strong. He learned to work the land, to read and write, to be kind. He never forgot his first mother, but he called Clara Ma without hesitation, and she loved him like he'd been born from her own body. Years passed. A daughter came, then another son. The cabin grew with the family. The land flourished under Nathaniel's hands and Clara's determination. And sometimes on cold winter nights, Clara would tell her children about the blizzard, about the 3 desperate knocks that had brought their father to her door, about how she'd almost said no, almost turned away the best thing that ever happened to her. But you didn't, her daughter always said. No, Clara agreed. I didn't. I remembered what my father taught me, that hospitality isn't optional, that when someone needs help, you help them, no matter what it costs. And what did it cost? Tommy would ask, even though he knew the answer. Clara would look at Nathaniel across the firelight, at their children gathered close at the home they'd built from nothing but hope and hard work and a single act of compassion. Everything I had, she'd say. And it gave me back the whole world. Nathaniel would smile and take her hand, the gold ring still bright on her finger after all these years. And outside, the wind would blow across the ridge that had almost broken her. But inside, there was warmth and laughter and love. Because Clara Whitfield had opened her door in a storm, had let in a cowboy and his boy, had given them her last meal and her mother's quilt and a chance to start again. She hadn't known he was a millionaire, hadn't known he was running from his past, hadn't known that 3 days would turn into forever. But she'd known what her father taught her, that kindness matters, that people matter more than profit, that sometimes the biggest risk you can take is trusting your heart when your head says no. And in the end, that risk had saved them all, the cowboy who'd forgotten who he was, the boy who needed a mother, and the woman who'd thought she'd have to survive alone. They'd found each other in the storm, and they'd built something beautiful in its wake. That was the story Clara told, and it was true, every word.